Wikipedia article. And as usual, we're gonna just start with a random Wikipedia article and just go with the flow wherever our thoughts takes us. So, without any overdue, I'm gonna try to bring my Wikipedia page up here, and it is not working. This is painful. Whenever this happens, it's painful. Come on, why are you not working? Why are you not working? Okay, let's try something else. There you go. Now we're talking. Perfect. All right. So, what is today's random article? Weibull is a German surname. Notable people with the surname include Alex Weibull, who is a German computer scientist, Bruce Weibull, who's American musician, Craig Weibull, American soccer player, Eva Maria Weibull, who's Austrian politician, Gerhard Weibull, who's an engineer, and another Gerhard Weibull, who's a motorcyclist, and Wolfram Weibull Jr., who is an Austrian sport shooter. Not sure what that means. I mean, if I have to dive into computer science versus American music versus soccer versus politics versus aerospace or motorcycle or a sport, I mean, aerospace is kind of intriguing. And this dude was born in 1938, so he is super old. Obviously, he's in his 70s, late 70s, 80s. Uh, so let's check this dude out. Gerard Weibull, born on 3rd October 1938, is a designer of gliders who worked for Alexander Schlescher GmbH Incorporation. Okay, so they were the major manufacturer of sailplanes located in Germany. So Mr. Gerard produced or designed apparently a lot of famous designs. He was born in Frankfurt. His father, Karl, had worked with Wolf-Herth. And who exactly is Wolf-Herth? Wolfram Kurt Erhard Herth was a German gliding pioneer and sailplane designer. He was a co-founder of Schempp Herth, still a renowned glider manufacturer. So Gerard began flying model in 1948, and in 51 he helped with building the SG-38. He then studied at wherever how should I pronounce that? Akafleg Darmstadt, maybe. Webel joined Schletcher in 1964. His first design, ASW-12, was based on the D-36. He then designed almost all the racing gliders for Kelsers up to the ASW-28, which first flew in May 2000. The W in the Schleicher designation shows that it was designed by Weibull. He retired in August 2003 after 39 years service. Wow. Let's see what is ASW-28. I knew it. I knew that my foster cat would be interrupting. She's super curious. All right, so ASW-28 is a standard class glider with a 15-meter span built of modern fiber reinforced composites. The manufacturer of ASW-28 is Alexander Schulzer GmbH Incorporation. Cool, cool. So, what is the design and development? The ASW-28 is a single-seat, shoulder-winged composite construction sailplane with a T-shaped horizontal tailplane and 15-meter wingspan. The upper wing surface has Schempp air brakes. I mean, it would take me forever to just learn how to pronounce these things, let alone fly in one or glide in one, I guess. It has 15-meter uh, wide wings, and only one people can sit in, and gotta be around 200 kg at the most. Let's see list of gliders. Whoa. This is a list of gliders or sailplane of the world. Note, any aircraft can glide for a short time, but gliders are designed to glide for longer. Okay, quite a big list. Why are there two different Wikipedia article if it means more or less same? But I'm gonna check out the glider. A glider is a fixed-wing aircraft that is supported in flight by the dynamic reaction of the air against its lifting surfaces, and whose free flight does not depend on an engine. Most gliders do not have an engine, although motor gliders have small engines for extending their flight when necessary by sustaining the altitude. Normally, a sailplane relies on rising air to maintaining altitude, with some being powerful enough to take off by self-launch. Self-launch, which means a motor glider is a fixed-wing aircraft that can be flown with or without engine power. The FAI Gliding Commission Sporting Code definition is a fixed-wing aerodyne equipped with a means of propulsion capable of sustained soaring flight without thrust from the means of propulsion. Okay. There are a wide variety of types, differing in the construction of their wings, aerodynamic efficiency, location of the pilot, controls, and intended purpose. Most exploit meteorological phenomena to maintain or gain height. Gliders are principally used for the air sports of gliding, hang gliding, and paragliding. However, some spacecraft has been designed to descend as gliders, and in the past, military gliders have been used in warfare. Some simple and familiar type of gliders are toys such as paper planes and balsa wood gliders. What are you doing? Do you want to say something? What do you want to say? Okay. Do you wanna say something to the world? Okay. That's acceptable. Why do you feel that way? Okay. All right. She's just looking at me. However, some spacecraft have been designed to descend as gliders, and in the past, military gliders have been used in warfare. Some simple and familiar types of gliders are toys such as paper planes and balsa wood gliders. Okay, so balsa wood, which comes from balsa tree. It's a large, fast-growing tree native of the Americas. It is the sole member of the genus Ochroma. The name balsa comes from the Spanish word for raft. Look at this glider over here, single seat, high performance, fiberglass, Glacier Jerks DG808 glider. I can imagine how beautiful it must be, just gliding over in the air, just looking down and wondering, wondering what I don't know, wondering what's going on down there. I did uh, skydiving a while back. I was trying to recall when I did it, probably sometime in 2011 or 12. And at the time, it was super fun. I mean, I loved it. And just diving down from like what 13,000 feet or something was surreal. When you kind of like look at the planet, look at all the uh, cars on the freeway or all the other buildings and whatnot. It kind of give that um, it makes you kind of wonder and admire how beautiful the world is. So I can imagine if you're gliding in air for hours, it could just feel the it must feel so awesome. I mean, we kind of sort of experience on airplane, but most of the people don't or got used to the planes so much that it just feels like you're riding a train or something after a while. And look here, I'm not sure what she's doing. Okay, okay. Do you want to say something else, or do you want to just run away like always? Uh-oh. Look like a problem. Technical issues, bro. Technical issues. No, okay. Do you want to say something? Do you want to say something to the world? Do you want to complain about me, Sprinkles? Do you want to complain about me? Okay. All right. What about it? Okay. Anything else? Anything else? Anything else? What? Okay, Walt. Look who's here. Miss Sprinkles. Okay, okay. All right. Like I said, she don't like to be held, and that's why I do that every single time. Not every single time. I try to like respect her boundaries. Uh, but she's the one who came up over here, so I thought maybe she kind of like see she's again messy. She loved to kind of just play around. Okay. We're having issues. We are having technical issues. Come on, Mac. Come on. Come on. Okay, let's switch back to the basics. And now let's see if there you go. Take couple time trials. Okay, so etymology. The glider is the agent noun. What? Agent noun? What in the world that does that mean? In linguistics, an agent noun is a word that is derived from another word denoting an action and that identifies an entity that does that action. For example, driver is an agent noun formed from the verb drive. Okay. So glider means like someone who glide, basically. Yeah, so verb to glide. It derives from Middle English gliden, which in turn derived from Old English glidan. The oldest meaning of glide may have denoted a precipitous running or jumping, as opposed to a smooth motion. Scholars are uncertain to its original derivation, with possible connections to slide and light having been advanced. Early pre-modern accounts of flight are in most cases difficult to verify, and it is unclear whether each craft was a glide, kite, or parachute, and to what degree they were truly controllable. Often the is only recorded a long time after it allegedly took place. A 17th century account reports an attempt at flight by the 9th century poet Abbas ibn Furnus, Furnus, maybe, near Cordoba, Spain, which ended in heavy back injuries. Oh, I feel sorry for you, Mr. Abbas. The monk Aylmer of Malmesbury is reported by William of Malmesbury, a fellow monk and historian, to have flown off the roof of his abbey in Malmesbury, England, sometimes between 1000 and 1010 AD, gliding about 200 meters before crashing and breaking his legs. According to these reports, both used a set of feathery wings and both blamed their crash on the lack of a tail. Hazarfen Ahmad Salibi is alleged to have flown a glider with eagle-like wings over the Bosphorus Strait from the Galata Tower to Üsküdar district in Istanbul around 1630 to 1632. Something like this. Interesting. The first heavier than air, that is non balloon man carrying aircraft that were based on published scientific principles, were Sir George Cayley's series of gliders, which achieved brief wing-borne hops from around 1849. Thereafter, gliders were built by pioneers such as Jean Marie Lebris, John J. Montgomery, Otto Lilienthal, Percy Pilcher, Octave Chanute, and Augustus Moore Herring to develop aviation. The Wright brothers developed a series of three-manned gliders after preliminary tests with a kite as they worked towards achieving powered flight. They returned to glider testing in 1911 by removing the motor from one of their later designs. The main application today of glider aircraft is sport and recreation. I like the idea of that. Recreation, especially. I mean, I would love to try gliding. That seems kind of fun. Gliders were developed from 1920s for recreational purposes. As pilots began to understand how to use rising air, gliders were developed with a high lift to drag ratio. These allowed longer glides to the next source of lift and so increased their chances of flying long distances. This gave rise to the popular sport known as gliding, although the term can also be used to refer to merely descending flight. Such gliders designed for soaring are sometimes called sailplanes. Gliders were mainly built of wood and metal, but the majority now have composite materials using glass fiber, carbon fiber, and aramid fiber. What is this? Aramid fibers, short for aromatic polyamide, are a class of heat-resistant and strong synthetic fibers. They are used in aerospace and military applications for ballistic rated body armor fabric and ballistic composites in marine cordage, marine hull reinforcement. So, yeah, used in various applications, basically. To minimize the drag, these types have a fuel gauge and long, narrow wings that is a high aspect ratio. In the beginning, there were huge differences in the appearance of early sailplanes. As technology and materials developed, the aspiration for the perfect balance between lift drag, climbing ratio, and gliding speed made engineers from various producers create similar designs across the world. Both single seat and two seat gliders are available. Paragliders. I did do paragliding once. It it was so short because there was hardly any wind. So I was in Peru, and there was this place close to the coast, in Lima, the capital of Peru. So I went there, and signed up for paragliding, and jumped off with an experienced paraglider, of course. And the second we jumped off, within few seconds, we started um, coming down because there weren't any wind to kind of like lift us up. So we ended up just gliding from like top of the hill to to the coast. So you know um, it was it was not a gliding experience. Um, I mean, unless you count like 15, 20 seconds of gliding as a gliding experience. But even then, that was sort of interesting overall experience. And I can only imagine. I wish the winds were good enough that I could glide all over that area, or I won't say all over, but whatever, glide around for a while and experience the coast and the city from a different angle. But it is what it is, I guess. And I haven't glided since. I don't recall if I had a chance to glide when yeah, so this one time I was in San Diego, and there was an option to glide, but I don't know why I did not. Probably I. Uh, but a paraglider is a free flying, foot launched aircraft. The pilot sits in the harness suspended below a fabric wing. Unlike a hang glider whose wing have frames, the form of paraglider wing is formed by the pressure of air entering vents or cells in the front of the wing. The form of paraglider wing is formed by the pressure of air entering vents or cells in the front of the wing. This is known as a air wing, similar to the smaller parachute design. The paraglider's light and simple design allows them to be packed and carried in large backpacks and make them one of the simplest and economical modes of flight. Competition level wings can achieve glide ratio up to 1 is to 10 and fly around speeds of 45 km per hour, which is pretty sweet. Like sailplanes and hang gliders, paragliders use rising air, thermal or ridge lift, to gain height. This process is the basis for most recreational flights and competitions, though aerobatics and spot landing competitors also occur. Launching is often done by jogging down a slope, but winch launches behind a towing vehicle are also used. Okay. A paramotor is a paraglider wing powered by a motor attached to the back of the pilot and is known as powered paraglider. A variation of this is paraplane, which has a motor mounted on a wheeled frame rather than on the pilot's back. Oh, this reminds me. I I did do this paraplane once. That was back in 2011, 2012 as well. Yeah, this was fun. Basically, just sat, behind, and we took off uh, with the motor. Because of the motor, we gained the speed, and then they had like a some similar to like paragliding, right? Like so they that kind of helped to lift it up, and then We were just in the air for 10 minutes or something, but that was pretty good experience too. Just flying up there and looking down, which was I don't know how many feet above the ground I was, but um, those 10 minutes were really great. It felt like I it was too soon. Kind of curious, like how long before we have jetpack of a sort so that we can just fly. I mean it's not technically gliding, but it's using jetpacks we can definitely fly. I've definitely seen some videos online, and I believe those videos are true or real. And there are a lot of different militaries across the world, and law enforcement who are trying those jetpacks so that I guess they can fly and catch the criminals instead of running or something. Glide bombs. A glide bomb is a bomb with aerodynamic surfaces to allow a gliding flight path rather than a ballistic one. This allows the bomber aircraft to stand off from the target and launch the bomb from a safe distance. Most types have a remote control system which enables the aircraft to direct the bomb accurately to the target. Glide bombs were developed in Germany from as early as 1915. In World War II, they were most successful as anti shipping weapons. Some air forces today are equipped with gliding devices that can remotely attack air bases with a cluster bomb warhead. Damn, this looked pretty hardcore. A cluster munition is a form of airdrop or ground launched explosive weapon that releases or ejects smaller submunitions. Commonly, this is a cluster bomb that eject explosive bomblets that are designed to kill personnel and destroy vehicles. Other cluster munitions are designed to destroy runways or electric power transmission lines, disperse chemical or biological weapons, or to scatter landmines. Some sub munition based weapons can disperse non munitions such as leaflets. What? Why is it propaganda? Airborne leaflet propaganda is a form of psychological warfare in which leaflets are scattered in the air. Oh, I see. So they just yeah, obviously they scatter those leaflets and people on the ground assume that those are like planes and try to kind of like shoot those leaflets and waste their ammo. So yeah, psychological warfare. I love psychological warfares. Because cluster bombs release many small bomblets over a wide area, they pose risk to civilians both during attacks and afterwards. Who knew? Unexploded bomblets can kill or maim civilians and or unintended targets long after a conflict has ended. Sorry, targets long after a conflict has ended. What? And are costly to locate and remove. Not sure what. Well, I mean, I get the idea. I don't think that that's a statement belongs in Wikipedia, but a U.S. Vietnam era BLU 3 cluster bomblet during the Winter War of 1939 to 1940. The Soviet the Soviet Union dropped RRAB-3, nicknamed Molotov breed baskets. See, there are different types of cluster bombs. Incendiary, which are the which these are the cluster bombs, which are intended to start fires, just like conventional incendiary bombs. Okay, they contain sub munitions of white phosphorus or napalm and can be combined anti-personnel and anti-tank submunitions to hamper firefighting efforts. Firefighting efforts, not fireflight. That's anti-personnel. So anti-personnel cluster bombs use explosive fragmentation to kill troops and destroy soft, unarmored targets. What exactly is soft target? Um, Along the incendiary cluster bombs, these were among the first types of cluster bombs produced by Nazi Germany during World War II. They were used during the Blitz with delay and booby trap fusion to hamper firefighting and other damage control affecting the targeted areas. They were also used with the contact fuse when attacking entrenchments. These weapons were widely used during the Vietnam War when many thousands of tons of submunitions were dropped on Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Quite a long history, and I bet like every weapons have uh, like very deadly and long history. What is non-state armed groups? Very few violent non-state actors have used cluster of munitions in their delivery system due to complexity. As of August 2019, cluster munitions have been used in conflicts by non-state actors in at least 6 countries. Okay? Hezbollah is a Lebanese Shia Islamist political body and militant group led by its Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah since 92. Hezbollah Hezbollah's parliamentary wing is the Jihad Council and its political wing is the Loyalty to the Resistance Bloc party in the Lebanese parliament. Okay. Islamic State of Iraq and Levant. Islamic State, at times known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and as the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or by its Arabic acronym Daesh, is a military Sunni Islamist group and former unrecognized quasi state that follows the Salafi jihadist doctrine. Cool. You do you, Mr. Islamic State. Northern Alliance. The Northern Alliance, officially known as the United Islamic National Front for the Salvation of Afghanistan, was a military alliance of groups that operated between late 1996 to 2001 after the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, which is Taliban now, I guess, took over Kabul. Separatist force for of the war in Donbass. The separatist force of the war in Donbass is the umbrella term for the military formations affiliated with the unrecognized pro-Russian breakaway region in Ukraine called the Donetsk People Republic and Luhansk People's Republic. These groups were formerly militia. I'm kind of curious to learn more about violent non-state actors. How many groups are recognized worldwide as violent non-state actors? In international relations, violent non-state actors, also known as non-state armed actors or non-state armed groups, are individuals and groups that are wholly or partially independent of governments and which threaten to use violence to achieve their goals. VNSAs vary widely in their goals, size, and methods. They may include narcotics cartels, popular liberation movements, religious and ideological organizations, corporations, example, private military contractors, self defense militia, and parliamentary groups established by state governments to further their interest. While some VNSAs oppose governments, others are allied to them. Some VNSAs are organized as parliamentary groups, adopting methods and structures similar to those of state armed forces. Others may be informally structured and use violence in other ways, such as kidnapping, using improvised explosive devices, or hacking into computer system. Not spilling blood, but still being violent. There are multiple types. Violent non state actors engage in combat in all terrains. Common and influential types of VNSAs include criminal organizations, drug cartels, for example, may carry out assassination, kidnap, theft, extortion, operate protection racket, and defend their turf from rival groups and the military. Okay, so drug cartels are doing that just for money. So would you call any non-state? Okay, it's a violent non-state actor. So I think it might comprise of like anyone, everyone who's not associated with government order, I guess, and who are violent. People's movement or sections of them that have chosen guerrilla tactics, also known as asymmetric warfare, to pursue their aims. An example is the Naxalite Maoist insurgency in central India. Yeah, Naxalite is it's a big problem in India, and honestly, I'm not super well versed into it to understand what the demands are. I mean, it looks like they definitely want more policies on the communism route. Uh, but I may have to dive in deeper to figure out what exactly they want, or how many different types of Naxalites are there in India. All right, violent non-state actor. Pirates are considered one of them, which outlaws that rob ships or take hostages in order to get a ransom. Recent examples include piracy of the coast of Somalia. Some pirates also state that they serve as coast guards in the place of a failed state. Then there are private military companies and corporations that either have their own or hire private military services. An example is floating armories in Indian Ocean. What? Floating armories are vessels used to store military-grade weapons. Being in possession of military-grade weapons is most judicious and highly controlled. In the early 21st century, piracy in international water became a serious issue for shipping companies. So I see why. And private military companies are also active in counter piracy, and thus provide an example of violent non-state actors combating other violent non-state actors. Violent non-state actors at sea, aren't that like pirates? Both pirates and private military companies are also part of this group. Okay. Religious or ideological groups such as Boko Haram, which is based in Nigeria. So Boko Haram, officially known as Jama'at al-Sunnah Lid-Dawaha wal Jihad, is a terrorist organization based in northeastern Nigeria, which is also active in Chad, Niger, and northern Cameroon. In 2016, the group split, resulting in the emergence of a hostile faction known as the Islamic State. Then there is citizen militia, which may form to protect a locality from or threaten it with attack. such as the anti-Balaka movement in the Central African Republic. And the anti-Balaka is an alliance of the militia group based in the Central African Republic in the early 21st century, said to be composed primarily of Christians. However, some church leaders have contested the claim exclusively Christian character of such groups. Interesting. Do you really question Christian characters of other groups when the the Catholic Church itself is drowning in lack of character, I guess? Parliamentary groups which make use of military methods and structure to pursue their agenda, such as the non-decommissioned Provisional Irish Republican Army, and then warlords who are leaders using armed forces to exercise military, economic, and political control over territory within a sovereign state. Warlords have a long history in Afghanistan, for example. Use of children. Violent non-state actors have drawn international condemnation for relying heavily on children under the age of 18 as combatants, scouts, porters, spies, informants, and in other roles. Although many state armed forces also recruit children, surprise. In 2017, for example, the UN identified 14 countries where children were widely used by armed groups: Afghanistan, Colombia, Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Iraq, Mali, Myanmar, Nigeria, Gaza, Palestinian territories, the Philippines, Singapore, South Sudan, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. Not all armed groups use children, and approximately 60 that used to do so have entered agreements to reduce or end the practice since 1999. For example, by 2017, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, called as MILF, in the Philippines had released nearly 2,000 children from its ranks. And the FARC EP guerrilla movement in Colombia agreed in 2016 to stop recruiting children. In other situations, the use of children was increasing in 2017, particularly in Afghanistan, Iraq, Nigeria, and Syria, where Islamist militants and groups opposing them intensified efforts to recruit children. Wow, fourth generation warfare? So it's a conflict characterized by a blurring of the lines between war and politics, combatants, and civilians. Lone wolf. A lone wolf attack or lone actor attack is a particular kind of mass murder committed in a public setting by an individual who plans and commits the act on their own. In the United States, such attacks are usually committed with firearms. In other countries, knives are sometimes used to commit mass stabbing. Law without the state is law made primarily outside the power of a state. I'm curious about the list of guerrilla movements. Look like I'm pretty sure every continent would have excuse me, some sort of guerrilla movement. Wait, yeah. I was wondering, what about India? Aren't there any guerrilla movement in India or around India? And there are quite a few. United Liberation Front of Assam, Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front, think only two. And People's Liberation Guerrilla Army. Okay. Wait, what is this? Oh, historical. List of guerrillas. What exactly is a guerrilla warfare? Guerrilla warfare is a form of irregular warfare in which small groups of combatants, such as paramilitary, personal, armed civilians, or irregulars, use military tactics, including ambushes, sabotage, raid, petty warfare, hit and run tactics, and mobility, to fight a larger and less mobile traditional military. Although the term guerrilla warfare was coined in the context of the Peninsular War in the 19th century, the tactical methods of guerrilla warfare have long been in use. In the 6th century BC, Sun Tzu proposed the use of guerrilla style tactics in the art of war. The 3rd century BC Roman general Quintus Fabius Maximus Vercusus is also credited with inventing many of the tactics of guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare has been used by various factions throughout history, and in particular associated with revolutionary movements and popular resistance against invading or occupying armies. Guerrilla tactics focus on avoiding head-on confrontation with enemy armies, instead engaging in limited skirmishes with the goal of exhausting adversaries and forcing them to withdraw. Guerrilla groups often depend on the logistical and the political support or of either the local population or foreign backers who do not engage in the armed struggle but sympathize with the guerrilla group's movement or efforts. Etymology. The Spanish word guerrilla is the diminutive form of guerra, which means war. The term became popular during the early 19th century Peninsular War, when, after the defeat of their regular armies, the Spanish and Portuguese people successfully rose against the Napoleonic troops and defeated a highly superior army using the guerrilla strategy. In correct Spanish usage, a person who is member of a guerrilla unit is a guerrillero, if male, or gorillera if female. The term gorilla was used in English as early as 1809 to refer to the individual fighters. That is, the town was taken by the guerrillas, and also, as in Spanish, to denote a group or band of such fighters. However, in most languages, guerrilla still denotes a specific style of warfare. The use of the diminutive evokes the differences in number, scale, and scope between the guerrilla army and the formal professional army of the state. Strategy, tactics, and methods. This is what I'm super interested in. So, the strategy, guerrilla warfare is a type of asymmetric warfare, competition between opponents of unequal strengths. It is also a type of irregular warfare, that is, it aims not simply to defeat an army, but to win popular support and political influence to the army's cost. Accordingly, guerrilla strategy aimed to magnify the impact of the small, mobile force on a larger, more cumbersome one. If successful, guerrillas weaken their enemy by attrition, eventually forcing them to withdraw. Tactics. Tactically, guerrilla usually avoid confrontation with large numbers and formation of enemy troops, but seek and attack small groups of enemy personnel and resources to gradually deplete the opposing force while minimizing their own losses. The guerrilla prizes mobility, secrecy, and surprise, organizing in small units and taking advantage of terrain that is difficult for larger units to use. For example, Mao Zedong summarized basic guerrilla tactics at the beginning of the Chinese Civilian War. The enemy advances, we retreat. The enemy camps, we harass. The enemy tires, we attack. The enemy retreats, we pursue. At least one author credits the ancient Chinese work The Art of War with inspiring Maoist tactics. In the 20th century, other communist leaders, including North Vietnamese Ho Chi Minh, often used and developed guerrilla warfare tactics which provided a model for their use elsewhere, leading to the Cuban FOCO theory and the anti Soviet Mujahideen in Afghanistan. And then, in addition to traditional military methods, guerrilla group may rely also on destroying infrastructure using improvised explosive devices, for example. They typically also rely on logistics and political support from the local population, and foreign backers are often embedded within, thereby using the population as a human shield. And many guerrilla groups are adept at public persuasion through propaganda and use of force. The opposing army may come to suspect all civilians as potential guerrilla backers. Many guerrilla movements today also rely heavily on children as combatants, scouts, porters, spies, informants, and in other roles. It has drawn international condemnation. Many states also recruit children in their armed forces. I feel so bad for those children. So, I mean, imagine you were born into a situation which you did not choose, and you have to make the best of it. So in order to do so, you end up participating in a warfare. I'm sure that plenty of people as well as children uh, make find a reason to support the warfare and whatnot. And I believe I would too if I were in that situation. For example, I used to think that if I were born pre independent India, then I would have been a freedom fighter, and that was my ethos since childhood, right? But because I wasn't born in that timeline, you know, obviously I what I'm gonna fight India's freedom from. I mean, technically on paper, Indians rule India, even though we all know there are a lot of different invisible power which controls majority of the industries in the world. And I'm not sure, or neither do I want to imply that these powerful sources have a nefarious reason or agenda to kind of create the chaos in the world. I do believe that these powerful sources are greedy for more power and more money, so they end up acting in a way that it brings them profit, but the world suffers, and they don't care about that. And that's, in a nutshell, is what life is. And that's why I bet like a lot of children end up participating in different warfares, which they don't even want to be in the first place. But what is free war? Free war is a form of guerrilla warfare that is conducted with cut off smaller military units in enemy occupied territory. The largest difference between free war and guerrilla warfare is that free war is conducted by regular military forces instead of parliamentary organizations or irregular military forces. Okay. What is Yank? Bert Yank Levy was a Canadian soldier, socialist, military instructor, and author, pamphleteer of one of the first manuals on guerrilla warfare, which was widely circulated with more than 500,000 published. He served with the irregular forces in several parts of the world in the 1920s. I bet Viet Cong is the organization which was fighting from Vietnam. The Viet Cong, officially known as the National Liberation Front of South Vietnam, was an armed communist political revolutionary organization in South Vietnam and Cambodia. Its military force, the Liberation Army of South Vietnam, fought under the direction of North Vietnam. Okay. Malaysia. What is militia? A militia is generally an army or some other fighting organization of non professional soldiers, citizens of a country, or subjects of a state, who may perform military service during a time of need, as opposed to a professional force of regular, full time military personnel, or historically to members of a warrior nobility class. Example, knights or samurai. Generally unable to hold ground against regular forces, militias commonly support regular troops by skirmishing, holding fortifications, or conducting irregular warfare. Instead of undertaking offensive campaign by themselves, local civilian laws often limit militias to serve only in their home region and to serve only for a limited time. This further reduces their use in long military campaigns. Beginning in the late 20th century, some militias, in particular officially recognized and sanctioned militias of a government, act as a professional forces while still penning part-time or on-call organizations. For instance, the members of United States National Guard units are considered professional soldiers as they are trained to the same standard as their full-time active duty counterparts are. Militias, thus, can be either military or paramilitary, depending on the instance. Some of the contexts in which the term militia can apply include forces engaged in a defense activity or service to protect a community, its territory, property, and laws. The entire able bodied population of a community, town, country, or state available to be called to arms, and a subset of these who may be legally penalized for failing to respond to a call up, a subset of these who actually respond to a call up regardless of legal obligation. A private, non governmental force not necessarily directly supported or sanctioned by a government. Other militia could be an irregular armed force that enables its leader to exercise military, economic, or political control over a subnational territory within a sovereign state. In former Soviet republics, an official reserve army composed of citizen soldiers known as militia, a select militia composed of a small, non representative portion of the population. Maritime militias composed of fishermen and other participants of a marine industry which are organized and sanctioned by a state to enforce its maritime boundaries. There have been quite a few militias. There have been a lot of militias in Canada for some reason. What about US? I bet US history. Oh, look at the Germany. Mexico. You have longer paragraphs than pretty much all the other countries so far. Portuguese is up there too. Russia and Soviet Union, not too bad. Syria, UK have a lot of history. It feels like that's the origin of all the militias. And then comes the United States. Okay. Knights. A knight is a person granted an honorary title of knighthood by a head of state, including the Pope, or representative for service to the monarch and the church or the country, especially in a military capacity. Knighthood finds origin in the Greek hippies and hoplite and Roman equus and centurion of classical antiquity. In the early Middle Ages in Europe, knighthood was conferred upon mounted warriors. During the High Middle Ages, knighthood was considered a class of lower nobility. By the late Middle Ages, the rank had become associated with the ideals of chivalry, a code of conduct for the perfect courtly Christian warrior. Uh, ugh. Often, a knight was a vassal. What's a vassal? A vassal or a liege subject is a person regarded as having a mutual obligation to a lord or monarch in the context of the feudal system in medieval Europe. Okay. Yeah, so they were forced into fighting for God as well as for the king. All right, so who served as an elite fighter or a bodyguard for a lord, with payment in the form of land holdings. The lords trusted the knights who were skilled in battle on horseback. Knighthood in the Middle Ages was closely linked with horsemanship and especially the joust. From its origins in the 12th century until its final flowering as a fashion among the high nobility in the Duchy of Duchy of Burgundy in the 15th century. This linkage is reflected in the etymology of chivalry, cavalier, and related terms. In that sense, the special prestige according to mounted warriors in Christendom finds a parallel in the Furusiyya in the Islamic world. That takes me back to the Game of Thrones. I mean, uh, they were pretty parallel about how how we manage our soldiers in this universe, right? But Game of Thrones universe was pretty unique. I mean, it had a lot of other components like magic, which doesn't exist in this reality. Um, or does it? No, I don't think there is anything called magic. Maybe like people have to describe it. I mean, lot of times the coincidental situations, like the synchronous situations, are considered to be like magical or something. So because it's just coincident does not necessarily mean that it's magic. But there's a long history of knighthood. Think I'm gonna um do one more Wikipedia article and then call it a day. So what exactly do I want to check out? Tournament. All right. A tournament or tourney from Old French tournament, tourney, was a chivalrous competition or mock fight in the Middle Ages and Renaissance, which is 12th to 16th centuries. It is one type of hastilude, and the hastilude is a generic term used in the Middle Ages to refer to many kinds of martial games. The word comes from the Latin hastiludium, literally lance game. By the 14th century, the term usually excluded tournaments and was used to describe the other games collectively. All right. The shows were held often because of coronations, the marriage of kings, births, baptisms, weddings of princesses, conquests, peace, alliances, welcoming ambassadors or people of great worth, and even other minor events experienced by the nobility. Over time, the S es, what? Ecclesiastical festivals or ecclesiastic, I think it should be pronounced that ecclesiastical festivities were also solemnized with them, of which there is a very marked testimony in the Chronicle of Don Piranino, where he ordered to perform very honorable parties in processions. He ordered to perform jousts and tournaments and games of reed, and gave weapons and horses and rich clothes and garrisons to those who were to make these things. Finally, it was celebrated for pure entertainment, and one of these parties, arranged in Valladolid by the consulate Don Alvaro de Luna, to which Don Juan II of Castilla came out to joust as an adventurer. Came out just as an adventurer. The chronicle of that valley is in cap L2, or it is L and Roman symbol 2, right? Or is it LII? Hmm. The heralds and kings of arms were in charge of publicizing the tournament, and the herald passed from castle to castle, taking letters and posters to the most renowned champions and inviting all the brave who were on the way. Jousting. What is jousting? As has been said, jousting formed part of the tournament event from as early a time as it can be observed. It was an evening prelude to the big day, and was also a preliminary to the grand charge on the day itself. In the 12th century, jousting was occasionally banned in tournaments. The reasons given are that it distracted knights from the main event and followed a form of cheating. Count Philip of Flanders made a practice in the 1160s of turning up armed with his retinue to the preliminary charge, and then declining to join the melee until the knights were exhausted and ransoms could be swept up. But jousting had its own devoted constituency by the early 13th century, and in the 1220s. It began to have its own exclusive event outside the tournament. The biographer of William Marshall observed that in his day, noblemen were more interested in jousting than tourneying. In 1223, we have the first mention of the exclusively jousting event. And jousting is a martial game or hasselude between two horse riders wielding lances with blunted tips, often as a part of a tournament. The primary aim was to replicate a clash of heavy cavalry, with each participant trying hard to strike their opponent while riding toward him at high speed. That is interesting. Horses in Middle Ages. But I am exhausted at the moment. Not like exhausted might be an exaggeration, but I'm a bit tired for sure. I'm gonna wrap this up for now, and we'll do this again tomorrow. We're gonna start with random Wikipedia article, and from there on, we will just go wherever our thoughts, our random information on the Wikipedia article takes us to, and hopefully, until then, you guys have a peaceful